Hi everybody, this is video 3. We're moving into unit 3, which is about researching specific careers and making a plan. So for the first couple of units, we've really been looking at sort of big picture stuff, thinking about all the different kinds of things you've done, thinking about all the possible paths you might take into the future. So we're going to transition from that kind of discussion towards a more practical, sort of nitty-gritty discussion about the specific kinds of jobs that are attached to particular careers, okay? And, part of the idea here is to start in very practical terms, imagining what your job goal is, and then figuring out what the steps are you need to take to get there. So that's really what we're going to talk about in this lecture. Okay, so the sort of premise for how I'm going to talk about this is that I think a good way to plan for your career is not to try to figure out what am I going to do tomorrow or what kind of job can I get in the year after I graduate. Those are things you do need to answer. But in terms of a career, you need to think long term. So what I'm going to suggest that you do is that you essentially start with planning out for where you want to end up and then work backwards from there. Okay? So what is your ultimate goal in terms of a career? What would that look like? And then you can figure out what are the things I need to do so that ultimately in the future I will be able to accomplish that. So we've already talked a bit in terms of your possible lives planning about what you think that future could be. So this is again sort of the more practical down-to-earth version of that kind of planning. So once you figure out what you think your ultimate career goal is, then you need to figure out what the steps are you need to take to get there. What kinds of credentials or experience or skills do you need to be a good candidate for that kind of a job in that kind of a career? For example, do you need education or training beyond a bachelor's degree, right? You're all in the process of completing a bachelor's degree. Figure out if the career you want requires a master's or a PhD or some other kind of training. It may not be a degree, but something else that you need to actually, learn how to do before you actually be in a position to get that, right? If you can't, if it's the kind of thing where you need experience and not, a specific sort of defined training course, then that's another thing to start planning for, right? If you need to get experience that you don't yet have, and you're not yet in a position to get the kind of job you want, can you get some kind of experience through volunteering or through internships or some other kind of venue that allows you to try out and get good at the things that you ultimately want to have as the skill set that will get you to your career? There's all kinds of things then that you want to start planning for now so that you have that list of credentials that you're going to need when you ultimately apply for that job. So really the idea here is, again, having a more specific version of your possible lives map, right? The possible lives map was really about what's that big picture? What's that thing you want at the end? And what are all the options for that? So now you want to really start mapping out, okay, if I'm going to go for possible life number 1, what is the timeline and what are the specific things I'm going to need to be doing for the next 5 years, 10 years, however long it takes to get into that career. Most careers take years to actually accrue all the experience and training and etc. to actually get, right? So that's why we want to start working on that now. Okay. As you do this, as you think about what are the steps I'm going to need to take to get there, I think there's a few things to keep in mind, right? In addition to, what are your big goals? What do you want to do? What's satisfying to you, etc. The first is to try to balance ambition and practicality. I think it's really good to be ambitious. In other words, to shoot for a big job, a big career, something that's challenging, something that requires you to take a risk. Those are good things to do. And map out what the practical implications of that are, right? Is the kind of career you're talking about one that will require you to move to a different part of the world? That might be incredibly exciting to you and wonderful to you, but be prepared for what the implications are for you, for your family, etc., right? The other thing to keep in mind is, as much as I'm telling you or suggesting that you come up with sort of an end goal and then work toward it, which I think is really important, that doesn't mean it's going to be a straight line. And it doesn't mean that it won't sort of change course as you're working on it. You do need to be able to adjust the trajectory towards your goal as new things happen and as new information comes in, at the point you're at now, thinking about what you want to do in 10 or 20 years, you don't know everything that you'll need to know, really, ultimately, to do that. So, as you learn more things, you're going to refine that plan, right? As you decide, oh, okay, I've learned more about this career field, and now I know that the specialty I really want to focus on is this, right? Or I've learned more about this career field, and actually I don't really want to do that. I want to do something that's kind of adjacent to that. All of those adjustments, small and large, are really important. So you need to keep reflecting on how the thing is going along the way. So that's sort of the third bullet. Check in with yourself, right? Do I like this? Is this what I thought it was going to be? I think a lot of us, when we first start planning for a career, we have in our mind what that career is like, but we haven't yet done it, so we don't necessarily really know, right? As you get more and more into a particular field or get more and more training in a particular area, do you enjoy it? Is it what you thought it would be? If it isn't, if you don't like what you're doing, I think it's really important to figure that out as soon as possible and change directions. The other thing I'll add is I think mentors are really important all throughout this process. As an undergraduate student, you have hopefully at least one mentor, right? Whether it's an academic advisor, a professor you've worked at, etc. It can sometimes be a little bit harder to figure out who your mentors are once you graduate, but I think it's important to seek them out. The first place to find a mentor, to keep a mentor, is, just because you graduate once you complete your bachelor's doesn't mean you can't continue to be in conversation with those professors or advisors, right? I hear back from students who have graduated all the time, and I'm more than happy to talk to them about what they're doing and do things like write letters of recommendation. So understand that your professors at Northeastern absolutely expect to maintain a relationship with you after you graduate. And it's important to check in with them if you have questions or if you need assistance as you move forward. You can find mentors in other places, certainly, in jobs that you do or in internships, etc. You can find mentors also even just in your social network. Sometimes, relatives can be mentors. So make sure you get advice from other people, that you have a sounding board to bounce things off of someone who you respect and who you know will be able to give you good advice. Okay, so this leads me to what you're going to be working on in terms of the assignment for this week, right? So if our goal is to figure out that long-term plan, that long-term goal, and then map out what we need to do to get there, this exercise you're doing this week hopefully will help you get into that kind of practical planning. So these are the instructions. Here's what you're going to do. All right. There's 4 steps, right? And please follow these instructions because there's sort of a few different things you're going to do. And I'm going to sort of be looking for all of these steps in what I see in your written up assignment. Okay. So you're going to write up the results of these 4 steps that you take. Okay. The first one is I want you to find a website related to the profession, the career that you intend to go into. For most fields, there's some kind of professional organization. You'll probably be able to find one of those, but it can be any kind of website that's relevant to the career you want to pursue, right? And I want you to find that professional organization. A lot of those websites not only have information about the field, they often have job boards, advice for younger people pursuing the career, etc. So first thing, find a professional organization or another website for an organization directly related to your chosen career goal. And I want to see that link, right? You're going to include that link so that I can actually click on it and go look at it. The second thing, you can use that website, the professional organization, right? Especially if they have a job board, which a lot do, and I'll show you an example in a second, or any other website where there are job postings for the career you are shooting for, right? Now, I want to be clear on what kind of job you're looking for when you look in these lists of job postings, right? I'm not talking about the job you can get the year after you graduate. What we're doing here is something aspirational. What you're looking for is an example of the kind of big job, right? Like the career job that you want to get 10 years, 15 years down the line, right? The goal job. it's a job that you're not in a position to get yet, right? The entire point of this exercise is to think about where you want to be in the future and figure out what you need to do to get there, okay? So you're not looking at something you would even apply to right now. You're looking at, well, what are those jobs that I think I ultimately want to end up in? What do those look like, right? And what are the credentials? What do you need to be able to demonstrate to get a job like that, okay? So you're going to use, again, either the website you found for part 1 of this assignment or any other website that has job listings related to your career. And I want you to find one of those aspirational, like career goal jobs. And I want you to either give me the link, I do want you to give me the link, right? I want to be able to see it myself, but I also want you to write up a little brief description, right? So that I can sort of see right away what it is through your description, but I can also click on the link to go see more of the details, okay? So for part 2, you're going to include the link to that job and also just a really brief kind of summary of what it is, okay? All right, that's step 2. Step 3, you're going to look in that job posting, and I want you to look for what you need to have or have done to get the job. That is the list of requirements. Any job posting is going to say requirements, right? Like what you need to have to get this job. Do you need to have a master's degree? Do you need to have 5 years of experience? Do you need to be able to do X, Y, and Z, right? I want you to, for step 3 of this assignment, give me the list of requirements, all right? You can either copy and paste it directly from the ad if you're able to do that, or you can write it out, right? But I want to see the complete list of requirements for that, again, big career job. It'll include things about education. It'll include things about experience. Usually it's quite a long list, right? So that's what you're going to give me for part 3, requirements for that job. And then number 4 is sort of, okay, given all that information you've just collected, what's the plan? So for 4, I want you to write up the steps you need to take over the next several years. And those several years, it could be up to 10 years, right? What do you need to do in the future, the nearish future, to become a good candidate for that position, right? Again, some of these plans will be long-term. If what you're looking at is a job that requires you to get a PhD, it'll probably be a 10-year plan, right? Because you need to first complete that work and then whatever other external training you need in order to apply, right? For some, it'll be a shorter-term plan. But for the most part, again, we're talking about something that you're going to move towards, grow towards. So the plan should be at least over several years and maybe as many as 10 years, okay? So this is the assignment, right? It's 4 parts. I want you to write up your sort of experience and what you found for each of those 4 into one document, right? And that's what you're going to submit. Let me show you a few examples for the kinds of websites that I allude to in the assignment that will be important for you to do this work. Okay. So there's lots of, and I'm sure many or all of you have looked at some of these websites in the past, right? So I'm just going to give you a few different kinds of examples. Websites where you can find information about careers and also job postings in those careers, right? One of the first things I mentioned in the assignment is a professional organization, right? A lot of professional fields, there's some kind of association or organization that is like a meeting place for all the people who are in that field, right? And there's usually a website that's got all kinds of information, job postings, maybe that if they have a conference or some kind of meeting every year, right? Like that's the kind of site I'm talking about. I'm an anthropologist, so I'll show you an example from that. That doesn't mean you need to use this unless you want to be an anthropologist, but it's just an example. I'll give you a few examples. So these are professional organization sites, right? Here's the one for anthropology. And like a lot of these professional organization websites, it includes a careers page. So if you decide I want to be an anthropologist, you can come to this page and you can, here's a job board. You can go, in my case, I'm interested in what's up for jobs in cultural anthropology, and I'm going to look, right? So then I can see, right, do I want to be an archaeologist? Do I want to direct something, right? So these are all the kinds of jobs that are, being posted. It doesn't mean I'm going to grab the first one. This is a place to find jobs that might include one of those career goal jobs for yourself. All right. Okay, so there's one example. Here's another example. This one is a museum association professional organization. If you're interested in working in museums, if you want to be a curator, if you want to be an educator in museums, if you want to be a researcher, right? Museums are a fascinating place to work. Had a lot of students who are interested in working in museums come to this Museums Association page, right? It's a professional organization for people who work in museums, and they have a bunch of information about careers. This one's especially good because they have all kinds of like advice about careers and how to get into it and blah, blah, blah. And they also have job postings, right? So this, again, would be another example of a place one could come to look. I'll give you one more, just because, again, this is something I find students are often interested in. If you're interested in forensic science, which is a range of different kinds of jobs, here's the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, another professional organization. And of course, right, they have a job board. So if you want to do something in this kind of field, you could come here and figure out what does a career job in forensic sciences look like, right? What is it? What are the duties? What would I actually need to do to get there? Okay, so those are 3 examples of professional organizations. Of course, there's lots of other places to find job postings. So I'll give you a few more examples, and I'm going to post this PowerPoint, so if you want to use these exact links for this assignment, you can. If you're interested in working for the federal government, right, here's a website, USA Jobs, that lists all kinds of jobs in the federal government, right? If that's what you're interested in, that's a place to look. There's a ton of these that I'm sure you've used. Glassdoor is one, a more generic job site. It has all kinds of stuff in all kinds of fields, all kinds of levels. So you can absolutely use something like that. Here's another one. If you're interested in non-governmental work, right? If you want to work in humanitarian or relief fields, some of those kinds of positions are contract positions where you might work at it for 2 years or whatever, but it's an exciting area, and it's, again, something I often see students interested in, working for nonprofits, etc. You can go to the NGO job board, right? And again, this is a place to find those kinds of jobs. So again, I'm just giving you examples. There's tons of different sites. So knowing now, as you do, some of the kinds of areas, kinds of fields, kinds of careers you're interested in, go poke around on the internet and find some of the professional organizations and other websites that are geared toward the specific career field that you're interested in. You can use the ones that I've put in this PowerPoint, or you can use others. The final thing that I'll note, which again I'm assuming many of you have already used, is Handshake, which is Northeastern's sort of job board and internship board. So you can always go onto Handshake and look again for positions. And a lot of these positions are more geared towards current students or recent grads, so you may not find that long-term aspirational goal on here, but I threw it in there just as something you should know about anyway. Okay, so again, I'll post this PowerPoint. You can use these links, but I really encourage you to spend a little bit of time looking around. Do a Google search about careers in your area, and you could include a search term like, job postings or job listings, and see what comes up, right? And again, don't grab the first job posting you see on that list. Look for the thing that is what you want to ultimately be doing, right? Once you've worked your way up the ladder, once you've completed all the training, etc., what's that sort of big career job that you want to get that will satisfy you for some time into the future, okay? So I'm looking forward to seeing what you learn from this and what you put into your assignment. So that's all for now, and we'll talk again soon.